Last bite of a homemade chocolate chip cookie. Mmm. Perfect. It was that. I'm hearing my neighbors. The kids were outside playing. They're still out playing, actually. And I'm listening to all the different sounds of summer. I'm just sitting out here and got the new neighbors moving in across the street. You know, they're doing construction over there and getting the house ready, and kids playing back there and people talking up there. It brings a sense of community. And I realized I had one of those epiphanies, you know. It's like they always come when you're sitting quietly pondering. I had a realization. I guess I just was kind of... I hear the ice cream man now. Perfect. Perfect timing. Okay, so anyway, this was exactly what I was getting at. Was I realized that this is how I view the summer. You know, I picture it as lively, enjoyable, children playing, stuff going on, ice cream. And I kind of view the world in general that way, or I try to. I try to think of people, see the good in people, and see the community that, you know, should be rather than the failures. So it made me realize all at once that all of us have so many different places that we live. You know, there's especially even YouTubers are around the world, but even those in the West or even in the U.S., we're so vastly separated by different lifestyles. And on top of that, different environments or different locales. Some people live way out in the middle of nowhere. And I can see how living out, let's say if you live out by yourself, you don't have a family, a person could tend to get very wrapped up in, let's say, fears, or it could appear that the world's coming to an end, let's say. This is just an example. Not saying people who live alone are like that, just that if you were to like move out to the cut, you know, to try to kind of escape society, let's say your intention was to get away from it all, to try to live off the grid. Let's say a person had the view that society was falling apart and they wanted to get away from it. And they get out there and you tend to create these ideas. We all create ideas in our heads about the way things are. And I guess that's what I was getting at, is I realized that, you know, some of the people who believe certain things or have certain ideas about life, or maybe even negative outlooks on certain things, it's not necessarily their fault, and it's not always necessarily a bad thing either. Everyone has their own views. There aren't really good or bad views unless they're harmful to the person or those around them. Or if they keep people away from knowing things that might help them or whatever. But milk and cookies. I have a family. I have a wife and, you know, 3 kids, and I love all of them very much. Great relationships. You know, we don't argue and fight, and that makes a home environment very peaceful. And with that comes a certain comfort. And then when I walk out, I know people who walk outside and think and hear the kids, you know, making noise and are annoyed by it. You know, like, it surprises me, but there are those like, oh, you know, keep it down kind of stuff. You know, that have never really. It's usually people who live alone, or people like, let's say, people who had kids. The kids moved out. A person gets maybe older. Generally, when you're young, you have more noise tolerance. You don't really worry about it. Doesn't, you know, you enjoy it, and most people enjoy the sound of children, but it's just action in general, just all the activities going on. And if I realize if I was put out in a cut, and, you know, in a cabin in the middle of nowhere, I could be led to a totally different way of thinking at this point. I might still be on, like, you know, a prepping trip. Maybe I would be like obsessed with the whole New World Order thing and everything. I was at one time, you know. I lost interest in it because it wasn't suiting me. It wasn't what it was I realized, yes, we're being lied to. Yes, governments around the world are corrupt, and we need to deal with the certain things we can, but it doesn't do any good to gripe about it. Certain things are just not things that we can change. So we work on the things that we can to try to get there towards a better life. And in the middle of that, people are going to have very different views on how to get there. Um, and all of these viewpoints are caused by different lifestyles, different relationships, and different viewpoints, different locations where you live. People who live in the very inner city, it might also seem that the world's coming to an end sometimes. Like if you live down in LA in some places, you may think that the world is like that. But the truth is, most of us don't really know what the rest of the world's like, as much as we'd like to study and think that we understand other cultures. And I think we know more about the Middle East now than we ever would have if we hadn't gone in there. But I remember talking to a friend of mine back in 2001 or whatnot, when we went into this damn war, and he actually admitted to me, because he was in favor of going to war. You know, he believed the whole, weapons of mass destruction, all that shit. And he ended up, he was a bartender, and I remember asking him one time, he said, honestly, when this war started, he says, I didn't even know that they had roads in Iraq. He's like, I thought they were all dirt roads. I didn't know they have cities, Like, he knew they had roads, but they didn't, they have paved freeways and cities. And at that point, I realized this is the mentality that so many people have of other areas. It was an eye-opening experience to realize that, I didn't know to what degree many countries had evolved. Like, if you think of a place like Morocco, or say Paraguay, what do you really know about those places? I'm sure a couple of you probably know a lot about one or two of those places, maybe both of them, but unless you've spent time living in a place and explored it all, it's hard to know the full extent of the culture and how the people really are, as opposed to how we're told people are. And so if a person's back to the people being pushed out into the, if a person moves out to the country and they still have an internet connection, it allows them to connect to the world, and at that point a person can see the positive or negative in society and what's going on. And I guess what I'm getting at is, it's okay to debate, it's okay to argue, it's okay to have different viewpoints, it's okay to be who we are and to express ourselves. But we have to remember, and I think the most important thing that we're lacking right now is a little bit of empathy. Maybe empathy isn't the right word, maybe it would be more like understanding, that each person goes through their own phase of problems. Each person has a very different outlook, and no matter what face a person puts on, no matter what you think you know about me from my videos and my camera, you know nothing about me. I'm the same way about you, all of you, anybody. We don't really understand what goes on in a person. All we see is that outer reflected self. And so seeing the differences in people, I think, is a really fascinating thing to me. It allows me to have a certain degree of understanding for other people, a little bit more tolerance for people who are really pushy or opinionated, or even those who are really rude or cuss a lot. Some people just are in a bad way, And I guess it's, you see people go through good and bad times in your life, family members and friends, and maybe you'll see them for a while, then you won't see them for a while, then you'll see them for a while. You might cross paths. I've seen on YouTube it's very similar. I might have similar interests with a person, and we'll talk for a while, they'll watch my videos, or I'll watch their videos, and then eventually I lose interest, or they lose interest, whatever. It's because a person moves into a different way of thinking that, people are on this level, and then all of a sudden they kind of go off here. And then, but it doesn't mean you abandon that altogether, because all of it comes back. And that's really the root of it all, is that no matter how much we argue and fight amongst each other about what we think is true, or what we believe is right or wrong, in the end we're all one entity, one organism. As much as we want, we could think that we're individuals, we can think that we have independent lives, and that maybe that's true. I still give a little bit of credibility to the possibility that maybe there is absolutely nothing to it, just a fluke. I don't really believe that. But if you don't leave a little bit of possibility, then you're shutting something out, and I never shut anything out. I haven't even shut out Christianity completely. I mean, I'm very much have found no evidence whatsoever that it's valid, nor Islam, which I had somebody pushing Islam on me the other day. And it's funny, I found that there's a certain approach that people take when they're trying to convince others. Um, with I've been asked if I understand Allah, multiple times. It's not very often, not as often as Christianity, but I'll get private messages, people asking me if I've thought about joining Islam. And I say, absolutely not. It's just, intolerant and corrupt as any other religion. It has some good points maybe, but it's not for me, thanks anyway. And then they'll continue to send me these long messages explaining why it's true, why it's valid. The one I got yesterday the guy was telling me that, Islam has scientific evidence within the Quran. I'm just like, what are you talking about? They didn't even have science when the Quran was written. How are you going to have scientific evidence? It doesn't work that way. So we kind of try to push our views on people because we think that we're right, and that's okay. But in the end, this is what it was the one thing that they always say is, I've been where you are and I finally found Allah, or whatever. Replace Allah with, Jesus, or with, archangels, whatever a person is into. Until I found this, I was just like you. No, you weren't. Nobody was. Nobody's ever been like me. Nobody understands where I'm coming from, because I'm me. And I'll never understand you either. And that's the beauty of it, is that we can do our best to vocalize and express who we are, but ultimately it's coming from a lifetime of experience, programs, melding into society, our independence or our codependence, all these different factors about us that make us who we are. So, yeah, take it for what it is. People are always going to have differences. And I guess looking at the big picture, looking at all the different countries, I mean, how many countries are there? I don't even know. I'm not as cultured as I should be in that. I think there's like 293 countries or something. I think that America is in 173 countries or something, the last time I checked. So, anyway, there's a lot. So, anyway, just some thoughts to ponder, and hope you all have a good afternoon. And learn a little bit more about each other, because that's all we can really do.